4 2/3. He did get roughed up towards the 5th. I guess I shouldn't say he was very good. He was good through 4, that's for sure. He was scoreless through 4. He only had given up, I think, 3 or 4, like 2 hits or something like that. But then Brad Brock actually earned the win since he completed the 5th. And the bullpen was phenomenal, much like we saw in the finale against San Fran. Kyle Ryan with 2 1/3 scoreless, 3 strikeouts. Did give up a run, but it wasn't earned. And then Brandon Kinsler, 2 strikeouts with 2 outs. And Derek Holland actually closed out the game in the 9th. Clean 9th inning, 1 strikeout, no walks, no hits, nothing for Milwaukee. Zach Davies struggled in this one. He gave up the 7 earned with 5 innings pitched. Only 1 strikeout for him, too. I know he's not a strikeout guy, but still. So a good win for the Cubs. 11-4. Can't complain today, honestly. It was kind of, I guess the offense minus Schwarber. It's a little disappointing, but when you look at it as a whole, Ian Happ, 3 walks, 3 runs, you love to see that. Robo Garcia finally got back into the hit column as well. So, can't complain. We'll have tomorrow off. I guess we might as well do the preview for the next series now as well. But it'll be a 3-game series against St. Louis. Like I said before, St. Louis lost the last 2 or 3 against Houston as they won the opener, I believe, Game 1. As we're now tied with them for first in the division, both of us with a record of 56-49, Milwaukee trailing us both by just 1 game. Yu Darvish will face Adam Wainwright after tomorrow's off day. So Game 1 will be Tuesday, 7:15 Central Time, start time. Guy to watch out for, obviously, Paul Goldschmidt. I know he had 6 straight games with a homer last night. I don't think he did it today because I saw the Cardinals, I think they lost 6-1 was the final. I knew they only had 1 run in the 9th, top of the 9th. I don't know if they scored in the bottom half of the inning. But Goldschmidt has been on a tear recently, so that's the guy to keep quiet for St. Louis. So, yeah, it'll be Darvish, Wainwright, Game 1. Game 2 will be July 31st on Thursday. Sorry, not Thursday. I don't know what I'm talking about. Wednesday. And that'll be between Kyle Hendricks and Miles Mikolas. Hendricks has a 2.88 ERA and 5 starts off the IL. But he also is only getting 1.6 average run support in those outings. He has held St. Louis to 16 innings of 1-run ball, including an 81-pitch shutout on May 3rd, which that was like the miraculous game. He was super efficient. And Mikolas has put together a few good starts since the break. He won his last outing against the Pirates. So he struck out 5. He's been all right, 4.19 ERA in the year, but Hendricks 3.26. I expect the Cubs to win that one for sure. We'll see about Darvish Game 1. And Adam Wainwright's just one of those guys that seems to do well against us, but we'll see. And then the finale will be August 1st as we turn the calendar to the new month. That one will be on Thursday, 6:15 Central Time, start time. John Lester will be back on the hill against Jack Flaherty, another one I expect us to win. So, to be honest, I expect a 2 or 3. And if Darvish is good like he's been, I know last outing was bad, but his 3 before, I think, or 2 or 3 starts before that, he was really good out of the break. So if he does well, all of a sudden I think we could sweep St. Louis. But let's not get ahead of ourselves because it all comes down to late innings, and our bullpen's got to be there along with our bats because we haven't seen either consistently as of late. So now let's talk about some potential trades that could happen. I'm not necessarily, I should say probably trade targets is a better word, because I'm not going to be brewing up a bunch of different potential trades. But some guys the Cubs are linked to. Obviously, today we saw Marcus Stroman go to the Mets. That's pretty surprising to me. And then Eric Sogard, a guy that I really wanted. I did a post a few days ago, probably 4 or 5 days ago, about some potential bats specifically the Cubs could bring in. Sogard was actually my number 1 choice just because of how cheap he was. Not having to give up a whole lot. He's been a good leadoff hitter. I think he would have been the solution. But anyways, he signed with Tampa, so he's off the board. But when you look at it, there's been a few guys we've been linked to. I want to mention first off, Detroit outfielder, the lefty masher, Nick Castellanos. Castellanos is a slash line of 284, 342, and 480. He led the league in doubles when I did the post 4 days ago with 34 on the year. Also has 11 homers. This is a guy that plays mainly right field, which does kind of pose a bit of an issue, being that Jay Hayes played right field consistently for the last couple of years. But when you look at it, this is a guy that could bolster this lineup. The only thing I think about it, the downside is that I don't think he's necessarily a leadoff guy. I think that's where the Cubs really are lacking. And if we're going to make a move for a bat, it better be a leadoff guy or something really out of the blue that could really shake up this lineup. Once again, I wouldn't rule out anything just because knowing Theo the way he is, he's very competitive and he's very flamboyant at the deadline, meaning he's willing to give up everything and anything for, kind of like that big splash we've seen the last couple of years. So I wouldn't be surprised if it was a big move, but a guy like Castellanos, I wouldn't necessarily disagree with if we got him. Let's look at another guy who's been kind of Mr. Utility for the Rangers this year, Danny Santana. He's played second, first, center, left, right, short. It really just kind of screams Joe Madden at you. He also has 13 homers this year and a 310 batting average, something like that. But he won't be cheap. He still has 2 more years of being arbitration eligible, so this isn't necessarily a guy I see high on the Cubs list. It's just another name that the Cubs could bring in. I would definitely take Danny Santana. It would depend what we gave up, but like I said, I don't think he'd necessarily be cheap. Definitely not as cheap as a guy like Sogard would have been. But also the next guy, Jared Dyson. This is a guy that has been he's signed through just this year. Given his age, much like Sogard, a guy wouldn't cost you a lot. He's familiar with the leadoff spot. His numbers haven't been amazing, but he's got tremendous speed out of that leadoff spot. He can bunt. And another guy to mention that kind of fits that build as well is Billy Hamilton with Kansas City. He's actually hit really well at Wrigley Field in his career too. So a name that a lot of people wouldn't talk about, and he isn't necessarily a huge move, but if the Cubs were to get a guy like Billy Hamilton, it kind of fits a unique role, especially with a team that's lacked tremendously in the stolen base department this year. A guy like Billy Hamilton or Jared Dyson, or Gerard Dyson, I think is how you say it, would definitely fit the build. And then as for relievers, I wanted to mention that we obviously got Derek Holland. It was Derek Holland and cash considerations for cash considerations. But anyways, Holland this year against lefties, when he came to us, a slash line of 182, 276, and 195, and 89 at-bats against them. So that's why we brought him in, because of our lack of lefty depth. He is earning $6.5 million this year with a team option next year for $7 million. The buyout is $500,000, and as a result, Tim Collins was DFA'd off the 40-man roster after being optioned to AAA for Ian Happ's call-up. However, Tim Collins cleared waivers. He's back on AAA now. But anyways, some other guys the Cubs could look at for relievers. The most unlikely I'd probably say is Brad Hand, just because Brad Hand is signed and under control through 2021 with a club option, and also Cleveland is kind of getting hot now. Minnesota hasn't been necessarily terrible, but they haven't been as good as they were in the first half. And I think Cleveland's actually just like a game or two back. So they're in their own playoff race all of a sudden. I shouldn't say all of a sudden, as they've been pushing to kind of get closer, but they were a good 6, 7, 8 games back until a couple weeks ago. So it would take a lot for them to ship him off, and then also with the contract thing. Another name that got signed that I saw the Cubs could possibly get was Jake Diekman, but he got signed to the Athletics, so that's not an option. The next guy I'd like to see the Cubs possibly get is Ken Giles. He has the highest strikeout rate amongst all AL relievers at 43.2%. His ERA is down to 1.59 with 14 saves on a struggling Blue Jays team. We just saw them ship off Marcus Stroman, so I would not be surprised if Ken Giles was traded in the next day or two, as they might have a fire sale. And then the last guy I'll mention is another Detroit Tiger. This one seems the most likely. The Cubs have been most connected to Shane Green. He's had a good year on another struggling squad, much like Ken Giles. 37 innings, he's allowed just 5 runs with a 1.22 ERA. An impressive .865 whip. That's walks and hits per innings pitched. Shows you kind of how much traffic's going on the bases. Also kind of tells you how lucky a pitcher is, because if that whip is really high, their ERA or SIERA is really low. Well, their SIERA actually would be high then too, because that shows luck. But if their ERA is really low and that whip is high, it's kind of showing they're getting out at an extreme rate of stranding base runners. Sometimes you'll see guys with strand rates of like 90%, 95% through 5-10 games when they get called up, and all of a sudden that number regresses back. But anyways, an impressive .865 whip and 10 strikeouts per 9. In my eyes, Green is a perfectly fine solution to bolster this pen. I also like that it's not a rental. He signed through 2020, and we've seen it just happen too often. I get that Aroldis Chapman won us a World Series, but you also look at the Quintana trade. We've just lost a lot of talent that's become all-star talent recently. I know that Dylan Cease hasn't been great in his first few starts for the White Sox, but he's got a bright future. Eloy Jimenez has been awesome for the White Sox. I think he got injured. Hopefully he's back. I think he's coming back soon. And then obviously Gleyber Torres. And once again, I get that Chapman won us the World Series, and I'll take that all day over Torres and whatever Torres does in his future. But it just goes to show that our high-end talent in the minors has panned out well. Is a trend that has shown the last few years, and of course all the guys that have been called up through our system. When you look at Javi, KB, Schwarber, all those guys, Hendricks, they were all brought up through us. So in the end, I think that I'd be reluctant in a way to trade the high-end talent for a rental, and that's why I like Shane Green more than some of these rental guys. So anyways, let's touch on the NL Central real quick. I know I have quite a bit throughout the podcast already. We're not going to get into the standings, since you guys know the Cardinals and us are tied with Milwaukee back by a game. But we'll look at the St. Louis Cardinals last week, and they swept the Pirates in Pittsburgh, an impressive showing. Like I said before, Goldie homered in all these games, but then they lost the last 2 or 3 against Houston. They did score in the 9th. I know I was talking about that before. I want to check Paul Goldschmidt, 0 RBI. Okay, so he didn't homer. Because I know I mentioned that he didn't homer until the 9th, but I saw the 1 run in the 9th. I got a little nervous. But anyways, his streak snapped at 6 games straight with a homer as the Astros won the last 2. And then, of course, we have the huge 3-game set before they face Oakland, and kind of an odd, I don't know why they have this. I guess it is to start a 5-game out west road trip. But still, they have two games on Saturday and Sunday. So, yeah, okay, that's weird. They have tomorrow off, like us, but then they have Friday off. I get that it's a travel day to Oakland, but a Saturday-Sunday series in Oakland, that's very odd. And then they have a very tough series against the Dodgers on the road next week, Monday through Wednesday. So if we're able to do our business and get stuff done, Oakland's been a good team. And the Dodgers, obviously the best in the NL. So, and then they face the Pirates, who I get that they just swept them, but still, a pesky team. They also face the Royals after that, and then the Reds. So, we need to win this series at least 2 or 3. We need Oakland to at least split, and the Dodgers to at least win 2 or 3. Probably, hopefully, a sweep there, as the Cardinals have a pretty easy schedule after this next week of games. Let's look at the Pirates last week. Obviously, I just mentioned that they got